Sitting down here at the 9-foot homemade oak bar, another week with Coach Jim Ramazinski, Coach Ram from the Evergreen Park Mustang football team. How are you, Coach?
Good. How are you?
Good. You know, I was sad to see that it was not a victory in a game that looked like it was pretty winnable. It was a very close score last weekend, and you were just telling me you guys kind of crushed it in a lot of categories, but except for the one at the end, which is the final score. Kind of let me in on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we had more offensive yardage on passing, rushing, everything. We were playing pretty good defense throughout the game. We gave up one big play early that was kind of a problem, but other than that, once we got settled in, we were good. And unfortunately, we lost the turnover battle. The one big category, we lost that 4-1, and we end up losing the game by 5 points.
Yeah, that's a rough one. When that happens, I mean, and the guys are feeling like we did perform really well. We just had these miscues that kind of screwed up everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, how do you talk to them about that afterwards? Because you don't really want to get into like, oh, we lost this game, because you see probably a lot of positive things on the field, but then, the miscues are really turnovers, and that's something I'm sure you talk about. How do you address the team with that?
Well, we talked about we just can't win football games if that's happening. But on a positive note, it was a strong finish by us, high effort. I was proud of the boys in a sense that they were playing tough till the last whistle. And the good thing is you come back on Saturday, we have practice in the morning. We watch the film. Everybody seems to understand, hey, we made these mistakes, but the effort's been there so far at practice this week. And we say this all the time, probably say this once a week on here. It's kind of, football's like life. When things don't go well, you could do one or two things. You could either kind of shut down and just kind of let it continue to happen, or you can get yourself back up and keep working. And I was happy to see the guys ready to work on Saturday and ready to work on Monday, and we're looking forward to the game this week.
All right, so we'll get to the game this week, and we'll get to some of your performers here in a second, but when you mention that the next week, it's easy for somebody to look at your schedule, say 2-2, and probably a couple of plays separates you from being 4-0, or at least 3-1, and you have 5 left. And we all know what the count is that you probably want to get to the postseason. How hard is it to get that all out of your head and just focus on the next game ahead of you? Because you probably feel like a better team than what the record shows, but you need to make some hay now over the next couple of weeks, right?
Well, the good thing is we know that we're, like you just said, a couple plays away from being 4-0 or at least 3-1. So we know that the capability is there. We know the ability is there. Now it's just, like we talk about here every week, you gotta come out and you gotta play a game all 4 quarters and finish the game. And the count that you mentioned, yeah, that's always on mine, but nothing happens 3 weeks from now this week. It's got to happen this week. We got to keep working. And Shepard's a tough team. They're coming in. They're good. Watching them on film, they have some nice players. They're well coached. We're still looking forward to the challenge, of course. And if we continue to kind of minimize those mistakes in the game, I thought, again, last week, practice was good. It's just, you get out there, make some key mistakes. It happens. It's high school kids. You move on. You hope that those don't continue in the next game.
All right. So before we move to Shepard, who are your big performers? Anybody you want to highlight?
Yeah, we had David Johnson did another nice day, 80 yards rushing with a touchdown. Arshawn Powell, 10 catches, 123 yards, touchdown. He was kind of all over the place as always. Genesis Ward had a big day on defense. The D-line played really well as a unit. Genesis Ward, 3 tackles for loss, sack, forced fumble. Anthony Luna got in there to recover that fumble. So, and the defense as a unit, I thought played well. They did have one mistake at the beginning of the game that was costly, but after that, getting settled in, only giving up one more touchdown on defense. A lot of it, a couple times it was short field on us, and we got some stops. I thought they played well as a unit, and I was happy to see that.
All right, so now we have a home game, and I found it really interesting. Like, your homecoming is not this week, it's next week afterwards, even though homecoming always makes me think that you're coming off a road game. So, like, why is that, first of all, before we get into Shepard?
I think it's because we only have 3 home games this year, and that just, kind of...
That one looked good on the calendar.
Yeah, the last home game looks good on the calendar for this particular year. Obviously, we don't want the schedule to work this way in the future, and we're working on that. But
this was because of that whole 1-1 thing, though, right? When you did the contracts with the 2 teams that you run up against at the beginning of the year, because last year you had 2 home games against them, you got 2 visiting games, and the schedule didn't work out really well for you with an amount of games in your own place.
No, and last year it's great. You got 6 at home during the regular season. It's not, bottom line, playing on the road is harder.
Yeah.
And I mean, you hear professional coaches and athletes talk about it as well. You hear major college programs talk about playing on the road is harder, and it just is. But it's not an excuse for us to lose a game on Friday night. We're looking forward to coming back home, being in the home crowd. The last environment we had at the game, our first home game against Oklahoma, was a really good environment during the game. Like, there was a lot of fans there. We talked about it last week on the show. It was a lot of fun. And we're looking forward to getting back home and playing a very quality opponent.
And fans should get out, because honestly, it's Shepard and then Blue Island, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Unless you make the playoffs and get a home game, like that's it in front of the home crowd. So get out against Shepard. Tell me a little bit about this team that you're facing. What do we know about them?
They're a talented team. They're off to a good start. They're 3-1. They have very nice skill players, good offensive line, pretty tough defense. They're well coached. I know last year their Frost Off team was pretty good. So a lot of those guys are up. They have some returners coming back. They got a transfer in at QB. They're a nice team. And like I said before, they have a lot of parts that are really strong, but we still feel like we match up well, and we're excited to play them.
Do you try to judge a team like that at this point in the season based upon who did they face and what their record is? Does that ever come into play when you're trying to figure out how tough they are? Or is that more your evaluation of film? Because I can look at their schedule and say, okay, well, their only loss is Joliet West, which from what I can tell is a pretty good program. And then they get Brooks, Bremen, and Argo. And you go, okay, well, I'm not going to say it's an easy schedule, but it's not going through, barbed wire to get to you guys. So is that an unfair way to assess a high school football team? Is it more about the tape for you?
No, you always look at the schedule and who they played. You have to. I mean, because, the reality is different conferences have, different levels of football teams. So they've played a couple nice teams. They've done well against them. They've earned their 3-1. They're a good team. We're excited for the challenge, but you got to look at both. I mean, you look at who they're playing. You can't assume, that, okay, if they played some teams that maybe aren't as high a level as others, and I'm not even talking about Shepard. I'm just talking
any team, and
just talking in general. Do you look at the scores of those games and kind of see how that translates? Sure, but the film helps. It's a combo of both.
How do you get film? Is it something like to programs exchange it? How do you do that? Because this isn't like it's on the NFL Network the next day. It's not like you have a scouting department that goes out in front, do you? So I mean, like, how do you pull that off to learn about your opponent every week?
The old schools are coaches who, if there's any listeners out there who coached years and years ago, they're going to be mad at saying this. They used to have to, I remember my high school coaches having to drive, meet people, exchange whatever, VHS tapes or DVDs, whatever it became. Now you can share through the huddle, which is pretty convenient. It's nice. If you want to go find additional film, you got to do that on your own, however you choose to do that. But no, we have a conference rule as well. Like you have to share 2 films with a conference opponent. So
you have to give them film of you. Yeah. Is that like okay? Because I always wonder, like, I love the TV show Friday Night Lights, right? Coach Taylor, that's my guy. All right.
I still have not watched it.
You've
I
never
know.
watched
I'm like
it? You gotta.
I've heard a lot of people say you gotta watch it
and enjoy yourself some Tim Riggins. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like you gotta enjoy that. Okay. But he always is watching film. Like it's something that's always happening during a TV show. He's getting ready for another high school football game and he's sitting there on his couch in his living room and like he's not even paying attention to what's going on in the house because he's got to get ready for the game. And I always laugh like, where does this come from? But it sounds like at least in this conference, you guys have to exchange some.
Yeah, I think that's pretty standard in most conferences now. But our rule is you have to share 2 of yours and they have to share 2 of theirs as well. And, as a coaching staff, we can pick what 2 they want, or I'm sorry, what 2 we want from them, and they pick what 2 they want.
Okay,
and,
so they pick what they want from you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't get to pick the film. Like, okay, here's a film, really vanilla stuff. We're going to give them this thing. Like, you get to pick what.
No, they're going to pick. And a lot of times when you're in conference,
because I always think of like, how can I gain an advantage? Like, okay, we're going to send them this film here because this isn't giving anything away. But okay,
they'll pick, and a lot of times they're going to pick when you're playing another conference team because then they have film on them,
right,
as well. Especially, obviously, if they haven't played them yet, they're playing them later in the season. It's honestly, it's much simpler now than it was years ago. It's Huddle makes it simple, and the conference rules make it accessible for everyone.
All right. Any big plan? Any big focus? Anything that you're telling your guys going into this contest?
No, we just got to play physical football. Shepard's a physical team. They got a tough running back. They got a tough defensive line, linebacking group. So just got to play physical. I was really happy to see our D-line step up in some physicality last week. I also, like we've talked about, the offensive line keeps continuing to take positive steps, which is great to see. And yeah, we just got to execute on both sides of the ball. Thinking back, let's think back to the last 2 games. It seems like both of the last 2 games, one side of the ball was performing really well, and the other side was just not quite as sharp. We need to get to a point where both sides of the ball are looking good at the same time. And we were able to get one win out of that, but then the next week we weren't. And, that's football. It's high school kids. We're trying our best to prepare them to win and be winners, not just on Friday night, but in general. And, playing football is a hard thing. That's why, there's a lot of people who do it, but there's a lot of people who don't do it. There's a lot of people who won't even try it because I think it's tough. I see it even with my own son. He's in 4th grade. He started this year. And even him, he's not used to practicing 5 days a week in a game every day after school. And I keep telling him, this is kind of how it is. And he's starting to enjoy it more and get used to it. But it's not an easy thing. But like I said, I'm proud of our effort throughout the game. Fought hard, came back with a positive attitude on Saturday and on Monday's practice, and I know that'll continue this week. And we'll be as prepared as possible for Friday night.
All right, Friday night, Shepard. The Mustangs looking to get win number 3. Game starts at 7 p.m. in front of the home crowd. Get out there and support your team. One of only 3 home games they have all year long, so get out and support the Mustangs. They want to win this weekend, and good luck.
Yeah, the home field atmosphere at Evergreen is really good. Our administrative team, our principal, Matt Dugan, Jim Solden, our AD, and all the tech people, they've done a great job of making this a fun experience for the students, for our players, for the families, and for all the fans. So we hope to see you out on Friday night.
It's the EP Podcast, all things Evergreen Park. It's the EP Podcast, Evergreen Park.